with his first ever appearance on Cooking with Michelle. It's our official cooking buddy! Yay! And now for the main event itself. The tour de force, the star of the show. It's Michelle! You! And what are we making today, Chef Michelle?
Today we're making stirred custard to put into cream puffs. So, we might have to do a couple takes.
Ooh, cream puffs.
All right, so we can make so with custard, you might be wondering, as did I, what's the difference between pastry cream or creme patissier, as they call it on the Great British Bake Off, or pudding and custard. Well, custard is, it's like a pudding, except that it's thickened with eggs. Pudding is thickened mostly with a starch, like flour or cornstarch. So it's really easy to make gluten-free pudding. It's really, really easy to make gluten-free custard because there's nothing in it that has gluten anyway. But if you find a recipe that has flour in it, just substitute cornstarch or gluten-free flour. It works pretty well. So I've never actually tried the gluten-free flour, but cornstarch we've tried before and it's done pretty well. So here I've got my mise en place. Ooh, right? And so I've got my double boiler. Should have got one from school, but I didn't think about it. I've got milk, I've got sugar, eggs, a teaspoon of vanilla, and a little bit of salt. So the first step says to scald the milk. So scalding the milk means you take your milk, and I like to do it in a little pot. You heat it not quite to boiling, but my little pot is in the dishwasher right now. So we're gonna do it in the microwave. A little bit of stuff. And you guys know how much I like the beverage button. Well, my microwave doesn't have one, unfortunately, so I'm just gonna put it in for, gosh.
Two minutes, the standard time to microwave any item if you don't know what time it needs to be microwaved at.
So we're gonna watch it, make sure it doesn't boil, because that's gonna make a mess, and it's gonna get it too hot. You do this process with bread as well. You wanna scald the milk before if you're making an enriched bread, which we'll talk about. But you don't wanna get it too hot or else you're gonna kill your yeast. So there's no yeast in this, but you want it about the same temperature, about kind of warm bath water, you know. Check it out, I think it's gonna be done, but almost. I'd like to say that my husband picked the music because I think it's meowing the Great British Bake Off theme. I'm not sure what's going on with that.
You are correct, Chef.
Not my fault. Okay, while that is doing its thing, bigger bowl here, and we're gonna beat our eggs, slightly beat our eggs. So in this recipe, we use the whole egg. Some puddings you use only the yolks. It's a little more common, but we're going also. By the way, the recipe comes from the 1950s version of the Better Homes and Gardens cookbook, which I grew up with using because my mom was of that era. Yeah, give you a shot of the book. So this is the version. The newer versions are not as good. They try to cut, in the 90s they tried to follow the health trends and cut out a lot of the fat in the recipes and stuff, and it just made them not as good. You don't have to be afraid of the fat in them, and that's not the health problems anyway. So, and if you're making custard, just make custard. Don't worry about that. But this is the recipe. This down here we've got baked. So basically you do the same thing with baked custard. You just put it into a custard cup and bake it. We're gonna do this version, which is we're gonna use a double boiler and we're gonna stir it so that we can pipe it into cream puffs. Most people will choose something a little lighter for cream puffs, but I like that bite to it. I like that, something a little thicker. Now, many of you are probably asking, Miss Mannion, we were on sandwiches and appetizers. Why in the world are you making cream puffs? Well, cream puffs actually are an appetizer in, depending on what you're filling with. You can do like crab salad and stuff and chicken salad, whatever. Also, we just had a lot of eggs left over, so I'm trying to use up stuff. All right, so here's my lightly beaten eggs. Getting our little cooking buddy in the background.
Hi, cooking buddy.
Okay, so I'm gonna, okay, put that on low, and we are going to combine egg, sugar, and salt, slowly stir in the slightly cooled milk and vanilla. So, throw everything in the bowl, is basically what that's saying. I'm gonna combine it in this bowl, because that bowl is a little hot because I left it on the double boiler, so I don't wanna scramble the eggs. Grab the salt. Oops. Okay. Now remember, egg yolk is what is holding the paint on the Sistine Chapel's ceiling, and it's been doing that for about what, 200-300, whatever, however many 100 years. Wash your whisks fast. Okay, turn that back up, but you have to pardon my turning the heat up and down and up and down. I just moved into this house not too long ago, and I'm not quite used to the stove yet. All right, so we're gonna cook this and stir it and cook it and stir it, kind of like your bechamel. It takes a while, so don't get antsy and don't stop stirring. If you stop stirring, what happens is the layer on the very bottom starts to cook and you get lumps. Yeah? Are you excited for pudding? Yeah? Are you excited? See, this is not hot enough when there's no bubbles. But if it starts to boil, then it's too hot. Now remember when I cracked the egg on the demo table, and I showed you those little goober things that are called the shaliza that hold the yolk in place while it's still uncracked. This is a great recipe to get rid of those because they're gonna create little lumps in here. I didn't do that because I'm being lazy. But you can kind of see every once in a while one will float by and I'm like, I should have done that. Should have done it.
We now return to your regularly scheduled custard already in progress.
Okay, so I've been stirring for about 20 minutes or so. If you get the milk a little hotter while you're scalding it, it cuts down cookie time in this process. But I didn't get mine very hot, so it's taking a while. So, ignore the bubbles, they'll eventually go away. But what you want is for it to just thicken a little bit. The longer you cook it, obviously, the thicker it's going to get because it's going to evaporate more of the water. But I did this with your bechamel sauce too, remember. I'm going to dip a spoon in, and when it coats the back of the spoon, and you can draw a line. That's called nappe. Okay, it's on the test. So that's how you know when it's thick enough. And if you taste it, and it's got a good like kind of thick mouthfeel, that's what you're looking for. And this will actually thicken a little bit more as it cools. So it tastes good now, but what's really gonna make it good is the vanilla. And you want to add this at the very, very end because it's alcohol based. And if you add it too soon, it's gonna evaporate. Alcohol has a very, very low evaporation temperature, evaporating point. So if you put it in too fast, all of that evaporates and you don't get any flavor. Okay, so we're gonna take this off the heat. Whoop. Oh, this point a little bit. I turned it up because I got impatient. Okay. You can stop stirring at this point, and I'm gonna put this in the fridge to cool it down so that it can be nice and cool when I fill my cream puffs, which I haven't made yet. So when you store this, it's real important that you take some plastic wrap and here, let me show you. Hold on. Okay. All right, so take plastic wrap and look, stew magically appeared too. And you don't just want to cover it. You don't just want to cover it. You want to push this down right to the top of the custard. Mine's fairly. I could have done this a little bit more to get it a little thicker, but. And somebody else is hungry too. All right, so now this goes in the fridge, and we make the cream puffs.